Welcome back to Blog Access 101. I'm your host, Young Abachi. Remember to follow us on social media at Blog Access 101 on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, Blog Access 101 on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts by searching Blog Access 101. I'm here today with two special guests, Brittany and Gemma, for our former women's collegiate sports segment. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you doing?
All right.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll jump right into it. Starting off with Brittany, just give a brief introduction of yourself, what sport you participate in college, and what you're currently doing now.
Okay, so my name is Brittany Furlough. I did track and field at the University of Houston. I did most of the 400-meter dash while at University of Houston. Had an amazing time there despite some injuries. But now I am the founder of the Athletic Pivot. It's just a platform for athletes to share their sports stories. It's an opportunity for us to help athletes transition into life after sports with purpose. And I just became a certified life coach. So my hope is to help athletes, specifically athletes, with their transition into life after sports.
Nice. Congratulations. All right, Gemma.
Hi, my name is Gemma Miller. I played softball in college. So I played 3 years at the University of South Carolina Upstate, which is a branch campus off USC, but it's still a Division I school in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I played 1 year at Queen's University of Charlotte. At the time, it's D1 now, but it was Division II then. So in Charlotte, North Carolina. And what I do now is I'm a PhD student at the University of New Mexico in the Sport Administration Department.
Nice. That leads me to my next question. Who introduced you into participating in a sport that you played in at college and obviously throughout your life?
I would say technically, this is a funny story. So technically, the dogs down the street from where I used to live introduced me to the sport that I was in. So one day I was walking home, and these dogs decided to chase me, and I literally outran the dogs. So I was like, okay, I might be a little fast. So I started racing all the kids in my neighborhood, and I would beat them, and my dad saw that. So my dad, once he saw that, I was pretty fast, he was like, okay, we have something here. And he started to develop me and bring me to the track, have me running little meets here and there. And my uncle, he also ran track as well, and he ran for Jamaica, ran in the Olympics for Jamaica. So he inspired me as well to want to run track. But I always say, the dogs down the street from where I used to live introduced me to track and field.
That's awesome. So for me, I have a big family. I have 4 older brothers. So we all have been super just played as many sports as possible growing up. So as the youngest, my brothers already had played baseball. My parents are very sports driven, they love watching, playing too when they grew up. So it definitely was not that I was forced to play or anything, but I was first going to play t-ball, and then it just kind of excelled from there. So I would definitely say it's a kind of a collective push to play softball. So it's definitely for my parents and my brothers, I would say, just an environment I was in. I don't know if there's one person or an animal in particular that kind of swayed me to start playing, but I think it was kind of a family push to start playing.
The sibling rivalry.
Yep.
Describe your traditional day as a former collegiate athlete, if you guys still remember.
Ooh. So it was maybe 12 years ago when I first stepped foot at the University of Houston. But a typical day consisted of, I think it was 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. weights. From there, I would take a little nap in the locker room because I would have class at 8 o'clock or 8:30. I would go to class, come back to the athletic center, take another nap, eat, because after that I would have regular practice, running practice. So that was till from maybe 12 or 1 to 3. I would take a shower. I would have another class. Then I would come back to the athletic center because I would have, sometimes it would have we have mandatory study hall, I think it's called. Yeah, study hall. Or we had some mandatory session that we had to go to. So sometimes my days would be from 5 or 6 a.m. to 8 or 9 o'clock at night because of just a typical day of being a student athlete.
Yeah, I know your schedule's always pretty crazy. Then it's just like it's barely
Yes,
getting time to sleep. Ridiculous.
right.
Gemma?
So mine's pretty similar to Brittany's, as in depending on the year of the time, but my weights were anywhere between literally like 5 a.m., meaning I had to be there at like 4:30 a.m. to like 6 a.m. Just kind of depended on the year. But yeah, I would have weights in the morning, and then I normally, unless it was super early, like the 5 a.m., then I would definitely go home and take a nap. But if it was a little closer to 8 a.m. classes, I would have class kind of right away. And I have class from, I don't know, 8 or 9 to like 1-ish, depending on the day. Then I'd have to go home, try to eat at the same time of getting ready for practice. Go to practice for 4 hours, not anymore, right? Or not any longer, because that would be a violation. But that 4-hour normal grind. Then I'd go home, shower as quick as I can, because then I'd have study hall with my team. Have study hall, hopefully be doing my homework actually. If not, I'd go home and do more homework, and then probably fall asleep pretty quick because I would have to do the same thing the next morning. So it was a never ending kind of grind. It was a little different on game days, but I definitely have treatment right before practice. I kind of forgot that part too. So before I go to practice, I would have to go to the training room for treatment. And then I would get to go to practice. Or if it was game day, then I would be going to a game. Yeah.
It sounds like a jam-packed schedule.
Oh yeah, there was not a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, for sure.
Describe your transition from playing collegiate sports to the work field you're in now.
So this is why I have the platform that I have right now, because my transition was extremely rough for me. Like all athletes, like my goal was to like run professionally. And I actually had the opportunity to try to run at the Olympic trials in 2012. But I got injured and I strained my hamstring, and that was it for me. Like that, it was just a downward spiral for me, to try to even get back on track from my injury. And it was just like an emotional roller coaster, even just trying to come back and try to run professionally. So I just knew that it was time to move on. And once I realized that, I was like, I can't remember how many years, but I think it's probably like 4 or 5 years. Like I was really depressed, dealing with a lot of anxiety, not knowing what is next, not knowing who I was outside of my sport. Um, just the whole like rundown of just what life after sports looks like was me. For some people, because most people, a lot of people don't go through that struggle of like identifying themselves, re-identifying themselves. But I know for me, like I really went through that. A lot of athletes go through that as well, and I didn't realize that until I started to share my story. Um, but once I started to think about ways that I could use what I learned in sports into where I am now, it kind of helps segue. Um, like into what I'm doing now. So I use the tools such as like um, uh, being dedicated or setting goals for myself, and pushing myself to reach those goals, because in track, like you set a goal for yourself, you're training to reach that goal. So I'm training myself to be successful in whatever I want to do. Um, And something else that helped for me was also seeing a counselor. And that counselor helped me realize like the bridge between like what I learned in sports and how I can apply what I learned into what I'm doing now. And that's why I was like, okay, I got to create this platform, because a lot of people don't know how to navigate the waters of, being a full-time student athlete into life after sports. Um, and that's why I'm very passionate on what I'm doing, and I'm very passionate of like now bringing the option of being a life coach to other athletes who are transitioning, because it can be rough, and you don't have a lot of people that you can relate to, even though you really do. It's just that people aren't sharing their stories. So that's where like I want to bridge the gap of like sharing athlete stories and getting it out there, so people know that you're not alone, or athletes know that you're not alone in this transition. And here's a platform for you to, you know, be able to reach out to certain people and say, hey, like, how did you navigate this particular situation in life after sports? Or what is some advice that you can give me to help me where I am right now? So that's my whole spiel of like how I dealt with life after sports to where I am right now.
Yeah, and I think this the platform is great with athletes. There's a lot of athletes out here that deal with that. I don't know if you guys already saw Creed 3 or planning to go see Creed 3.
I didn't go see it. Mhm.
All right, I ain't gonna say too much then, but it's something along that aspects. When he retired, he had those issues of not being able to express how he felt.
Mhm.
Just try to adapt to life after sports, which is always tough no matter what level you're at, whether pro, college, or even high school. Um,
Mhm.
like it's just you used to doing a certain schedule routine, and it just gets totally changed, and then you kind of like feel lost and don't know what to do, and kind of helpless a little bit.
Mhm.
But I always feel like obviously therapy is a good thing. We know a lot of people are scared to do that. I mean, I was one of them. 5 years people trying to get me do it, and I'm like, I'm not messing with that. But then I found out,
Absolutely.
oh, this is refreshing because
Mhm.
so I try a lot of people that I'm cool with, athletes or just people in general. Like yeah, therapy is good for you. As long as you find the right therapist. And just you have somebody to talk to that's not gonna be judgmental, or if you get in an argument, not gonna throw it back in your face because that's their profession. So
Mhm.
so yeah, that's definitely a good platform. Gemma.
So I guess my kind of experience or struggle with it was sort of similar. Um, so when I was done, I definitely went through this like identity crisis of, I was an athlete, I have always introduced myself for like 17 years of, hey, I'm Gemma, I'm a softball player, or I'm a whatever athlete. So when it was done, I was like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I was just like, it's like that meme of from Talladega Nights, like, what do I do with my hands? Like, I literally felt like that. Like, I was like, I have no idea what to do. So I was, and I went to therapy for a few months afterwards, and it really was about like, how do I, go on? Like, what else am I besides an athlete? It's kind of like struggled with that identity. And then afterwards, I was applying to a million places, but my problem was, before I graduated, I wasn't really thinking that hard or like applying myself to different areas of thinking, okay, I could do this next. So I kind of was like almost starting from like ground zero. So then I ended up getting a graduate assistant position as a softball coach to get my master's at the same time, which I feel like it's pretty normal for athletes to kind of jump into a position right afterwards, something around athletics, whether it's coaching or whatever. And I definitely went that route of coaching. So I did that for a couple of years, and it was funny when I was coaching, I was like, you know what, maybe I don't miss it as much as I thought I did. Not that I don't love the sport, but I definitely was like, you know what, I think I'm finally okay with being done. But even to this day, there'll be times where I'll see things from former teammates that get together or just like my former teams, and I'm like, oh, you know what, I kind of miss that. I miss that environment. So I think it'll always be a part of me that's kind of like, oh, I miss being that athletic side, but I definitely have come to, accept that I am done. But yeah, I definitely went through a whole struggle of kind of figuring out what's next. I mean, I still feel like part of me is still trying to figure out, right? I went from getting my master's, and then afterwards I was like, I don't want to coach. So what am I going to do now? And then I had a advisor at the time that had his PhD, and he was like, you know what, I think you would really excel in a PhD program. So then him and a few other my professors really pushed me to do so. And I was like, you know what, you're right, I'm not ready to go into a real world, so I'm going to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I definitely think now I'm kind of figuring out what I want to do next. But yeah, it's still been a kind of a struggle for me, right? You identified as an athlete or, played a sport for so many years that you're like, when it's done, especially I think the NCAA and NAI have pushed a lot now for athletes to have resources for this transition. But when I played, there really wasn't that many. If there was, it really wasn't talked about. So I was kind of like, deer eyes wide open, like, what am I supposed to do? So it's definitely a struggle. It's taken me years to be like, I'm not going to say, I used to pause after I'd say, hi, I'm Gemma, because I was like, I can't say I'm an athlete anymore. What am I? So it's definitely taking me a lot of years to kind of come to terms with it. So it's still been a kind of a struggle, but I've taught, had therapy. I've reached out to former teammates of mine and been like, how's it going? Just to have those conversations, really simple, even if it was for 10 minutes, check-ins. I think that's definitely helped me. And I think it's helped other athletes as well, kind of come to terms and cope with that transition afterwards.
Yeah, most definitely. Nice to see I wasn't the only one that got finessed by my advisor to get into the PhD program.
Yep. Oh yeah.
That one, first year I was like, I don't know, what the hell did I sign up for? But
Oh yeah. No, that was me last year.
but what are some things you recommend to current athletes that are about to go through the same transition from college athlete to the work field?
There are a couple of things that I recommend. The first thing that I probably recommend is like at some point, like us competing is going to end. So I know what I did when I was in school. I interned under the athletic director for the university because I knew that like at some point I was going to have to transition into something else. So I intern. So something that I would recommend is for them to like, if you know what you want to do, like find someone like because you don't have the job experience yet, so find some department or find some area within your university to where you can like at least intern and get that little bit of experience on your resume. So if you do or when you do apply to, jobs after sports, like you have something on your resume because it's hard to just leave sports and then jump into the work field if you especially if you don't have any experience. So that's one tool that I would suggest. Another tool, another thing that I would recommend is kind of similar to what Gemma said, which was like to reach out to people because they can be a big resource for you. Like closed mouths don't get fed. So if you don't reach out and like advocate for yourself and say certain things, like hey, like how did you navigate this water? Or hey, do you know anybody that's doing this that can help me out? Like if you don't say anything, then you're just going to be stuck where you are. So reach out, get advice, find a mentor that can help you navigate the waters in life after sports because trying to do it alone, it's rough. And that's what I tried to do for many years after I was done, like do it alone. And it didn't help me for a couple of years after I was done. So I had to like really reach out and make connections and, market myself in a way that was, pulling me in the direction in which I needed to be in.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like sometimes, like, especially athletes, just people in general, try to like feel as though help is a handout. Really, I mean, I ever see it as a foot in the door. Especially if you're athlete, you don't really probably not have a lot of time, already don't have enough time for yourself, personal time, but definitely won't have too much time to do internships. So I think it was definitely smart to try to find something like in your field where you or in the athletic department to work where you don't have to travel too far because you're already there. But yeah, definitely always look for somebody that's already in especially in a position that you want to be in, or know somebody just like you say, closed mouths don't get fed, which is a bar. Because people not mind readers, they don't know what you want to do after sport. They can't just think, typically people like average people think like, oh, they're probably trying to go pro. And some people might just play sports because they loved it and just get a scholarship, graduate, get a degree, and then move on. So I definitely understand it. But Gemma?
So I would say my advice is pretty similar. One, you're gonna have to come to terms eventually with, it's going to end and and it's really hard. I remember people kind of preach at me, especially my senior year, like, hey, are you thinking about after? And I'm like, no, I'm thinking about senior season. What do you mean? Like, I don't have time to be thinking about anything else. Because in my mind, it was like, you know how your coaches always push you, like you need to think about like your priority list, right? If it's God or whatever, spiritually, your family, and then it's your sport. So that's how I thought. I was like, what, school and jobs afterwards is so far on that priority list right now. I don't have time for that, right? And like you said about how athletes, their schedules are so packed that, maybe you don't have time for an internship. I would say to current athletes, try to think about maybe you can do something during the summertime with the athletic department. There's always, a few breaks or whatever. If you're a fall athlete, maybe think about the springtime. When the schedule is a little less packed, it still is going to be packed, but maybe a little bit less. Or think about the summer. That's what I did. I did actually do a couple internships, but it was always during the summer because that was the only time I had. And with that, network, biggest thing. Even if you don't really have the time to maybe do an internship, work a job or whatever, do your best to reach out throughout, those college years. Even if it's like, hey, you want to sit for coffee one day if you have a free weekend, or can we sit on a Zoom meeting or something for 10 minutes? One, networking your entire life, not even just in sports, is the biggest thing you need to learn to network. And also realize that when you're done with the sport, it's okay to grieve it. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
don't think that you have to be so strong where you shouldn't feel this way. I remember that was a big struggle for me when I was done. I was like, why am I so sad? Like I had this, I was so privileged and had this opportunity to play sport. I shouldn't be so sad. Like not everyone gets to play a sport in college, but I was like mad at myself for being this upset and like having this identity crisis. But big thing is realize it's okay. Take your day or two or week, month, whatever you need to kind of come to terms. But like Brittany is saying, reach out to whoever. Maybe that's a parent, maybe that's a grandparent, maybe that's a friend, a former teammate, even a coach. And now again, I kind of already mentioned this, but with the resources a lot of schools and the NCAA has, use them. If I knew about how many resources now that schools have, I would hope that I would go back and use them. And I would hope that, the upperclassmen, when I was an underclassman, would be like, yeah, I'm using this to like kind of help me with that transition. Or maybe I know my Queens now has this big like kind of career afterwards department, and that I wish I would have used it more. I didn't really I knew about it, but not enough. But now they really push it, especially because that school is very big, like athletic school. A lot of the students there are athletes. But yeah, I definitely recommend finding those departments within your university, finding your people, whoever that is for you, to talk with, realizing it's okay to be upset that it's over, but it's also not the end of the world when it's over. There's so much more to you than just being an athlete, right? There's so much more to you than just being that sport, and it's going to take a few, however long it takes you, that's okay. But try your best. I know it's hard for me. Try your best to think about it a little earlier. Try your best to reach out to or network with whoever, maybe, and it doesn't have to be your for sure field. It could be something you're thinking about, and then reach out to someone else in a different field. Try to find wherever that place is for you afterwards.
Can I piggyback off of what Gemma said really quickly about the grieving part? I think that is very important to really highlight because a lot of athletes don't understand. Like, essentially, it's like you're losing a loved one
Mhm.
because your sport was like something you loved so much, and when you lose it, you really are grieving. It's literally like losing someone, and it's okay to grieve. Like, and I didn't understand it. Like Gemma said, I like privileged enough to get a scholarship, to go through
Yeah.
school, get my master's, do it all. Like it's it's a process, but it's very important that you recognize that you are grieving and take that time to really grieve so that you can actually go through the process and overcome that process. Because if you just skip over that grieving part, it's rough. It's going to hit you later on down the road. So I really like that you said that. Yeah, that's
All right. What are some things you miss most about being a collegiate athlete? You guys touched on a little bit earlier, but
I miss the camaraderie. Like I miss just like having my girls around. I miss the competitive part of it as well. Like I was a different person. I had a alter ego and everything. Like I just miss the competition. And now I'm like trying to find different ways in which I can compete, but it's just not the same. It's not that like the adrenaline that you feel. It's like, man, like, and then when you run and you're done, it's just like, man, you feel on top of the world. And I miss, those are the two things that I miss, the camaraderie, like with my teammates and just like having fun and like just being carefree and doing something that you love while having fun and just like going at it, like leaving it all on the track. Like that was just the best feeling ever.
definitely. Gemma.
Yeah, I definitely say I miss probably my teammates the most. Like I just said, this past weekend it was alumni weekend at Upstate, and all of my former teams are messaging me, "Hey, are you coming?" Blah blah blah. And I was like, I can't, but I wanted to so bad. I had that FOMO of, that's the biggest thing I miss. I miss being around my teammates so much. Like when I look back at my college years, that's always the first thing I think about is those experiences with the people, I was with literally every day. Not that I ever took that for granted, but now that we're kind of all over the place, a lot of my friends kind of live on the East Coast. Now I'm, in New Mexico. So we're kind of all over the place. And now we only get together when someone's getting married or whatever. So I definitely miss that aspect. I do miss the competitiveness of it, especially because, I grew up an athlete my whole life. I have too many brothers. I've been super competitive about everything. Now I find myself being competitive about like cornhole, like too competitive
Right.
sometimes. And I'm like, all right, I need to simmer down, but it's the athletic side coming out of me. I think the last thing is going to sound funny, but I do miss like weight training and stuff, because I remember that was a big struggle for me afterwards. I was like, so where's my whiteboard that's going to tell me to work out for the day? Like I have to make this up myself. So I do miss that. And I think that comes with the competitive nature of kind of competing with my teammates. Like, all right, who's going to outlift who? Not in a toxic or bad way, just to push each other to get better in the weight room. So I do miss that side again. So I think Brittany and I are kind of on that same wavelength of being like the camaraderie with the team and, you know, that environment you're with. And then I guess that competitive nature that athletics brings out of you. And it's just a fun competitive nature, right? It's not anything that's bad within each other, but it's just kind of brings out that fire in you. And I do miss that part of it.
Yeah, definitely. So last question, what coach or person was most influential in your success as an athlete?
I think you probably know this answer, but
Yeah.
I would say my high school coach, Lenny Jordan, he has been like the most influential person in my life thus far. Like not only like was he just my high school coach, like he was like a second dad to me. And you know, he cared about me far more than just athletics. And I am forever grateful for him because he believed in me. He was the first person to put me in the 400-meter dash. He has been my baby ever since. Has taken me so far. And you know, just the way in which he pushed us, like he built up my mentality of like I can overcome anything. Like he was very, very hard on us. And at that moment, like when I was running under him, I didn't understand it. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, I understand like why he pushed us so hard mentally and physically, because in the moments where I start to feel a little like weak or like just can't do this, like I remember like how tough, you know, he was on us. And like I said, like he's just more than a coach. He is another father figure for me, and I just can't thank him enough. He's just the best. I'm sure you know.
Definitely. Gemma?
So I remember you told us that, you know, we're going to be asked this question, and even you just asking it, I'm still like struggling to find a person, right? I just think me being able to be an athlete in college was such a group effort. It was my coaches before I got to school. So Furlough, who was my travel ball coach, also Ben and Coach Mitch. They really helped push me, especially Lance, because he was actually a community college coach at the time, as well as my kind of travel ball team. It really instilled kind of those, you know, those characteristics of being a division or just a college athlete. I shouldn't say division one, just a college athlete, and really like pushed me to be like, you know, certain things you're doing right now are not going to slide, and really just like pushed me to be a better athlete than I've ever been. But even getting to school, my coaches at Upstate, Coach Hawkins, Coach Pack, they really, I mean, I wouldn't be the person I am today without them. Same with Coach Stacey Stram and Coach Roser at Queens. I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it wasn't for the coaches I had. But if it really boils down to it, I would definitely say my dad. He even before I was an athlete, even not just with school, work, whatever, he's always instilled these values of, you know, hard work, honesty, into me that I definitely wouldn't be as successful as far as school wise, as far as, you know, networking wise, if it wasn't for him. He's always like, if I was sitting there complaining, he's like, okay, so what's the solution? That was always his thing. Like, yeah, you can sit around here and complain all day, but what are we going to do next to better yourself? And that's something I've always put in myself. Not that, you know, sometimes you need your days, right, to complain a little bit. And he let me have that. And that was an important thing for me to know, like, it was okay to be upset about things. But then he'd be like, all right, now we're going to take a breath. What's next? How do we improve this? How do we work harder? How do we, you know, even if I was sports oriented, how do we get out of this slump, right, for hitting? Or how do we fix, you know, your backhand in softball? But, you know, that transition to life. So, you know, if I was having a problem, you know, relationship wise or just with work, he'd be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like, what's the next step? Who do you talk to about, you know, when fixing this problem? Or have you talked to this person? You know, how was your communication skills? So I definitely think my dad has probably been the most influential person, not just athletically, but just kind of life wise, but definitely he's helped me improve, you know, my sports, my athletic ability. He always pushed me to be better than I was the day before. Yeah, I would definitely say if I was going to pick one person, I would say him.
Yeah, you definitely gotta have that person in your corner that you can be like vulnerable to, and
Yeah.
just not interject or say anything, or not throw it back in your face. So it's always need to have that person in your life. And then my last comment from you guys, like, you guys have anything that you wanted to add that you didn't already say, and also where that people can follow you at on social media.
I guess I would say, like, if you're an athlete out there listening to this podcast, if you don't take anything from today, just make sure you take away the point of it is okay to reach out. It is okay to find someone who is going through the same thing that you're going through, because you're not alone. And if you don't share what you're going through, then you're going to be alone. So definitely reach out, get therapy if needed. It's very important. Get a life coach if needed to help you navigate
Okay.
the waters. And if you need to find me on social media, my platform is at the Athletic Pivot. And if you want to listen to my podcast, it's on Spotify and it's on YouTube, and it is still the same at the Athletic Pivot.
Nice.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
Gemma.
Yeah, I would say one, take your time to be okay with grieving that process of the transition afterwards, but also enjoy that moment, or enjoy those 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is that you get to be a college athlete. It's seriously, like, I wouldn't say it's the best years of your life. I think there's always going to be something that you're going to find that's better afterwards, but it is definitely a big part of you. It's a big transitional period, right? You're in college or undergrad years from 18 to 22, 23, whatever it is. And it's a big time in your life, right? You're struggling with school, trying to figure out what you're going to do next, trying to be the best athlete you can be, but enjoy it, right? It's so fun. And it's still, no matter what the level is, NAIA, JUCO, Division 3, 2, 1, it's still such an honor to play. And I just think people put way too much pressure on themselves in it. Like, have fun. That's why I always hate the trolls or whatever on social media about like college athletics, like dogging on like all these kids. I'm like, they're literally like still such young adults that like some of them can't even drink. Like, leave them alone. I just think, have fun. Don't worry about the small stuff. No one gives a crap within a month afterwards or a year afterwards. It's really not a big deal. And then afterwards, like, let your time to grieve, reach out to others, find your network, whatever that is. And that just does, I don't mean that just career wise, obviously that helps, but find your network of people. And if you're ever going to reach out to me, I guess the best way to follow me, or if you ever want to reach out to me, I'm more than willing to talk. I do a lot of research in this area of, college athletes and their environments, as far as I like to research a lot into the coach climate between an athlete and a coach. So I do conduct a lot of research, but I have done research into that transition afterwards, and kind of that career preparedness as well. But best way to find me probably is on Twitter. So it's going to be at my last name Miller, the number 5, and then my first name Gemma. That's probably going to be the easiest way if you ever want to follow me or reach out. I do tweet a lot of stuff that regards this kind of topic we're talking about, as well as I post sometimes if I'm conducting a study and you're willing to participate. I definitely appreciate it. I know Rob knows the struggle of trying to get participants sometimes. So I hope if you're listening that you give me a follow, so we can, improve this life of the transition afterwards and just college athletics in general.
Yeah, appreciate you guys coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.